There are so many different kinds of JRPGs out there to play, but sometimes you go in looking for a challenge. And believe me when I tell you, there are some truly difficult JRPGs out there. This list is dedicated to the games that don't hold your hand, the ones that make you earn every single ounce of progression. These are my top 10 hardest JRPGs that will break you. Some of these games will push you with relentless boss fights. Some will have mechanics that are incredibly difficult to master. Others just refuse to explain anything at all, letting you stumble your way into failure until you understand what you should be doing. The great thing is that if you can stick with them, if you can push through the frustration, the learning curve, you'll find something really rare and amazing. These games are all really great. So, with all that out of the way, let's get into the list. Romancing Saga 2 Revenge of the Seven is a modern reimagining of a notoriously challenging JRPG, and it makes no attempt to sand down its edges with its fully 3D environments, dynamic camera work, and dramatic reorchestration of the soundtrack. The remake breathes new life into a classic, but make no mistake, this is still Saga through and through, and that means it's gonna be hard. The game's defining feature is its multi-generational structure. You don't play as a single hero, you guide an imperial dynasty across decades, even centuries. Each time your current ruler dies, a new heir takes the place, inheriting abilities, formations, and hard-learned lessons. But here's the twist. Everything you do echoes forward. Train inefficiently, neglect key abilities, or squander your limited LP, and your descendants will definitely pay the price. Combat is deceptively traditional at first glance, but deeply punishing. You can't always grind your way to victory, and enemy strength scales dynamically with your progress. What matters is team composition, tactical formation, and your grasp of the weapon and tech learning systems, which the game doesn't really explain all that well. Part of the challenge is trying to learn all these systems on your own, but that's also part of what makes it so rewarding. The seven heroes, your primary targets, can be tackled in any order, but that freedom is a double edged sword. Approach them unprepared or without the right abilities, and you'll be demolished. Dungeons are mostly non-linear, often disorienting, and filled with encounters that can be rough if you aren't fully prepared. What makes Revenge of the Seven especially brutal is that the punishment for mistakes isn't always immediate. It's generational, like I said earlier. You might make a wrong choice early on and not realize that that choice was wrong, and you'll see the consequences hours and hours later when your empire starts to collapse under the weight of your bad decisions. This is a game that demands planning, experimentation, and honestly, just a willingness to fail. It won't explain its systems, and it certainly won't hold your hand throughout it. But for players who thrive on long-term strategy and really high-stakes resource management, it's one of the most demanding and honestly, one of the most rewarding games that I've ever played. On paper, E's memoir, Oath and Felghana, is a flashy, fast-paced action RPG, but the deeper you go, the more you realize it's more of an arcade gauntlet type of game, if I had to describe it. This isn't about stats and grinding, it's about just being really good at the game. Felghana strips down the ease formula to its tightest and most punishing form. Every boss is a skill check. Every dodge and slash has to be timed perfectly. The game wants you to learn every single pattern. Even on normal, the difficulty spikes are immediate and very unforgiving. On hard or nightmare, I mean, I don't even want to try those difficulties. It becomes downright impossible from what I understand. Some of the hardest aspects of the game even aren't even the combat. It's the platforming elements, which the difficulty can't make easier for you, making the game incredibly hard to finish, even on the easiest difficulty. You don't get healing items mid-fight either, and magic is tied to cooldown, so if you slip up, there's no safety net. The margin for error is razor thin, and the game is relentless in making you repeat boss fights until you've internalized every single move. There's also no level select, so you really commit to your difficulty and just kind of have to live with it. But what really sets Felghana apart is its old school design philosophy. It's not trying to waste your time. When you die, it's fast. When you reload, it's instant. This loop is all about iteration and mastery. And when you finally beat that boss that's been like wrecking you for hours, the satisfaction is completely unmatched. And it's actually part of the loop that kept me going. This is one of those rare JRPGs where reflexes matter as much as your build, if not more. And the memoir version keeps all that challenge intact, just with higher fidelity and better performance. It's not for everyone, but if you're looking for a pure, brutal action JRPG, this is Ys at its most refined and most ruthless. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 doesn't just wear its difficulty on its sleeve, it integrates it into the very core of its design. From the first few hours, it's very clear this is a JRPG built around two things: precision and pressure. It's fast, it's stylish, and it's absolutely unrelenting at times. The core idea here is brilliant in its cruelty. You're part of a doomed expedition trying to reach and kill the Paintress, a being who erases people from existence by simply painting their names. Every year, she kills the next number in line, and this year, it's 33. You have one chance to climb the mountain and end the cycle, or be erased yourself. That tension right there bleeds directly into the gameplay. Battles fuse traditional turn-based structure with real-time skill checks, dodging, parrying, and time-based inputs aren't just optional. They're the difference between surviving an encounter and getting absolutely wrecked. Every action feels high stakes because you're never just selecting commands. You're executing them in real time under pressure. The difficulty curve is unapologetic. Normal encounters often include enemies with overlapping abilities and perfect synergy, forcing you to juggle enemy patterns and optimize team tactics constantly. Boss fights are cinematic, multi-layered events with complex attack patterns that require memorization and really sharp timing. There's no safe way to play. You either commit to learning the systems or you hit a wall that's really hard to overcome. What really raises the difficulty ceiling, though, is how little the game explains. Skill interactions, buffs, and some character-specific mechanics are barely tutorialized. You're expected to learn through experimentation, and that means a lot of trial and error. The build system is crazy flexible, and one of the main aspects that hooked me in, but it punishes you for poor optimization, and the lack of traditional grinding spots makes recovery from bad choices much, much harder. Expedition 33 isn't just challenging, it's demanding in a way that's reminiscent of maybe Lost Odyssey in many ways, but with an even sharper edge in my opinion. The kind of game where each victory feels earned, not just because the numbers lined up, but because you played the game really, really well. I loved this game in every way, and it's a 10 out of 10 for me, so jump in knowing it's a challenge, but 100% worth it in every way. At first glance, Soul Sacrifice feels like Sony's answer to Monster Hunter, a dark fantasy action RPG with co-op multiplayer. But unlike Capcom's big hitter, Soul Sacrifice is far less forgiving in many ways. It's a game that demands skill. Your skills are all tied to consumable offerings. Use a spell too many times and it breaks. Heal too much and your stats suffer. You're constantly choosing between survival now and strength later. It's a system that turns every battle into a more risk-reward equation, especially in solo play where there's no one to back you up. Boss fights are where the game's difficulty really spikes. Archfiends don't just hit hard, they have massive AoEs, erratic patterns, and sometimes outright unfair mechanics. You need to not only memorize their behavior, but manage your limited spells while dodging constant attacks. There's a brutal attrition to every fight. But the real kicker is the moral system. At the end of each fight, you can choose to save or sacrifice a defeated creature, or even your allies. Saving boosts defense and healing, sacrifice boosts your power. Your choice isn't just ethical, it's quite strategic. Go too hard on one path and you can cripple your build or lock yourself out of some really helpful skills. There's also no traditional progression, no gear grind. It's an odd progression system if I'm being honest. Every fight pushes you closer to the edge, and if you die too many times, you're done. The game expects you to make painful decisions regularly and live with them. It's hard, not just mechanically, but philosophically. Soul Sacrifice is trying to be fun by giving you a massive sense of accomplishment. It's trying to push you to your limits, and it definitely succeeds at that. Fantasian is a bit of a Trojan horse. At first glance, it looks like a classic throwback, a diorama-crafted turn-based RPG from the father of Final Fantasy. You might expect a breezy nostalgia trip. Instead, you get a game that gradually transforms into a tactical endurance test, especially in its brutal second half. The main draw here is the dimension system. It lets you bank random encounters and fight them all at once later. Sounds convenient until you're facing down 40 enemies in a single mega battle. If you don't manage your party's resources and skills carefully beforehand, this can be quite difficult for you, especially later in the game. The game splits into two parts. Part 1 is traditional. It's challenging but very fair for the most part, and actually I personally would have preferred if the entire game stuck to this format. Part 2, it drops you into a non-linear structure with limited guidance and significantly tougher enemies. Healing becomes scarce, dungeons become gauntlets. You'll often find yourself stranded deep in enemy territory with no way out unless you perfectly manage all your resources. Bosses are another story entirely. They often introduce new mechanics mid-fight, massive AoE attacks, scripted team splits, or time-based debuffs, and the game rarely warns you in advance. You basically have to play through them a few times to understand what needs to be done and to take them down. Grinding can be a little rough as well at times, requiring you to find particular spots that are well set up for doing so. This forces you to engage with the systems and learn them deeply. Builds, turn manipulation, elemental weaknesses. Fantasian quietly demands mastery of all these things and punishes casual play harder than you would expect. It's one of the rare games that gets significantly harder the more you play, and yet that difficulty is part of what makes it so special. I do really enjoy this game and find that the story, characters, and music make it all worth it in the end. Of all the games on this list, Resonance of Fate might be the most mechanically complex. Developed by Tri-Ace, this game gives you the guns, grenades, and one of the most complicated battle systems ever put in a turn-based game. Combat revolves around positioning and momentum. You don't control characters traditionally. Instead, you set paths, perform flips and slides, and execute hero actions that string together massive damage chains. But every action burns resources, and if you screw up the timing or the trajectory, you lose your advantage instantly. Then there's the scratch damage system. Enemies don't die from your initial attack. You have to convert scratch damage to real damage with the right weapon at the right time and the right place. It's a dance of perfectly coordinated moves, and the game gives you almost no help in learning how to do it. Worst thing is, you can build yourself into a corner. There are no traditional classes or job systems. You equip guns and grenades, and how you train your characters determines their growth. Focus too heavily on one weapon, you may lack the flexibility needed for late game encounters. And because enemies scale harshly and attack relentlessly, there's almost no time to correct mistakes. Even random encounters can spiral out of control if you mistime a jump or forget to recharge your action gauge. Bosses are even more punishing, often requiring precision-perfect planning, understanding of elevation, and smart use of risk-reward tri-attack system. And let's not forget the hex-based world map, which requires collecting colored tiles just to progress. One wrong placement and you might have to backtrack for hours. Resonance of Fate is the definition of you either get it or you don't. But if you do get it, if that light bulb goes off, if it becomes a game that you connect with, then it ends up being the most rewarding, unconventional JRPG like ever. Just be prepared to suffer before you get to that point. If mainline Shin Megami Tensei games are known for their brutal turn-based battles, Devil Survivor 2 takes that formula and layers a full tactical grid on top of it. It's part strategy RPG, part demon management sim, and part calendar-based stress simulator, and it's hard. Each day is broken into time slots. Choose to spend time with a character and you lose the chance to train, fuse demons, or recruit, but neglect your team and you may miss out on vital skills, or worse, story paths. There's no way to do everything, and you're always sacrificing one thing for another. Combat demands careful planning. Enemies aren't just strong, they're really smart. They target your weakest units, exploit your elemental vulnerabilities, and often have skills you haven't seen yet. The press turn-like mechanics mean one mistake, one missed null or repel is often pretty fatal, and bosses are more like puzzles than brute force fights. If you don't know the solution, you will lose. Permadeath raises the stakes even higher. Lose a human, party member, and they're gone for good. Unless you're on casual mode, demons can be replaced, but it takes time and resource management, and the fusion system is both deep and quite punishing. And then there's the fate system, which locks or unlocks abilities based on who you spend time with. So not only do you have to win battles, you have to plan your schedule like your life depends on it, because honestly, it kind of does. Devil Survivor 2 isn't interested in being fair, it's interested in making you feel overwhelmed, and that feeling of pressure on the battlefield and off the battlefield is what makes it so uniquely punishing. Some Fire Emblem games can let you grind your way to safety, but Conquest handles things a bit differently. It's the most brutal entry in this specific trilogy, in my opinion, not because of overpowered enemies, but because it demands perfection almost all the time. Every chapter is a puzzle box, and every move you make must be intentional. Unlike Birthright or Revelation, Conquest gives you almost no room for mistakes. Your experience and gold is heavily limited. You can't just out-level your problems either. Instead, you have to solve them using the tools provided, no more, no less. It's a game that forces you to engage with everything. Unit pair-ups, terrain advantages, weapon triangle dynamics, and enemy skill stacking. And the AI can be absolutely relentless. It doesn't make many mistakes, and it will punish yours with no hesitation. Archers will snipe your healers, mages will target your weakest resistance, and bosses often have unique skills or map-altering gimmicks like freezing tiles, enemy reinforcements, or fog of war that force you to stay ahead of the curve. What makes Conquest so uniquely difficult is that its challenge doesn't feel random. It's very deliberate. Levels are carefully designed with enemies placed to counter your likely strategies. There's no spamming overpowered units here. You need to balance your team, and you need to plan every turn very carefully. Higher difficulties ramp up the pressure with smarter AI and more dangerous skills, but even on normal, Conquest demands discipline. Casual players will be blindsided. Even veterans can be pushed in this game. And those who overcome Chapter 10, if you know, you know. It's arguably the hardest defensive map in franchise history, and at that point, you will know exactly what kind of game you've signed up for. This is one of my favorite 3DS games for good reason. Definitely give it your best shot. I really liked Conquest. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 lulls you in with its charm and cheerful tone, but once you've sunk a few hours in, it becomes clear this game is a war of systems. The combat is incredibly deep, and the game refuses to explain most of it. At the heart of its challenge is a real-time battle system that stacks mechanics like nothing I've ever seen before. Auto attack build-up arts, which build up special attacks, which you then combo into blade combos, which in turn open up chain attacks. And if you miss a step, and the entire system kind of collapses. And that's really just surface level stuff. Now add aggro management, positional bonuses, rare blade RNG, field skills for exploration, and enemies that routinely out-level you and fight in groups. It's overwhelming at times, and I personally love every minute of it. This is one of my favorite games of all time. I love when a JRPG implements difficulty through its mechanics, and mastering those mechanics can be the most rewarding thing ever. The game's UI is a little cumbersome as well, and I can tell you, just mastering its systems, like I said before, a sense of accomplishment all on its own. Then there are the bosses that hit really hard. They add summons mid-fight and often require full understanding of combo chaining to survive. One of my biggest criticisms is also one of the most addictive hooks in the game. The game's blade system is purely RNG based. You open core crystals and hope you pull a useful blade. There's no guarantee you'll get a healer, a tank, or a damage dealer. You can mitigate this a little bit with special items, but the randomness means your strategy might fall apart simply because you didn't get lucky enough. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is a test of endurance and comprehension. You have to love systems, dig into menus, and seek out community guides to fully understand what's going on here. But once it clicks, I can honestly tell you, this game becomes one of the most intricate and satisfying JRPGs of all time. No game on this list is as willing to let you destroy yourself as The Last Remnant. It's a game that actively sets traps through its core systems, and if you fall into them, you may not realize it until you're 20 hours in. The biggest culprit is battle rank. The Last Remnant's version of experience scaling. Enemies don't level with you in a linear way. Instead, your rank goes up whether you get stronger or not. So if you grind without improving your union's abilities or crafting better gear, you'll face enemies that completely outclass you. The game never explains this really, to be honest, and if it did, I totally missed it. Many players only realize something's wrong when they hit a boss that seems completely unbeatable. You don't control individual characters in battle like you normally would. You control squads of them. You issue broad commands like attack with combat arts or use healing magic and hope they interpret those orders intelligently. Sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't, and sometimes they just get one shot before they can even act on anything. Combat is cinematic and chaotic, full of simultaneous skirmishes. Morale swings wildly, turn order shifts constantly, and status effects can cripple entire units. If you don't understand initiative, formation bonuses, or how to bait enemy unions, you'll be wiped out very quickly. Then there are bosses, some of the most infamously difficult in JRPG history, and without perfect planning and ideal party composition, it can be unwinnable. The game doesn't scale down, it demands you just overall get better at it. But what really makes The Last Remnant so punishing is how opaque it all is. The systems are deep, yes, but they're also not really explained that well. They're unforgiving and nearly impossible to recover from if you've made some really poor decisions. I'd honestly personally say it's more of a strategy game kind of masquerading as a JRPG. It's infuriating at times, but overall it's very fascinating. It's a one-of-a-kind game experience and one of the hardest games I've ever played. Difficulty in JRPGs is rarely straightforward. Sometimes it's mechanical, sometimes it's strategic, and sometimes it's just a complete refusal to explain itself, but each of these games shares something in common. They reward those who refuse to give up. If you're ready to kind of suffer but learn and grow, there's no better genre to test your limits. These JRPGs will definitely break you, but what comes after is where the real magic is. It's that satisfying sense of accomplishment. Let me know in the comments below what JRPGs you think deserve a spot on this list, or which ones caused you the most headache. And if you like this video, please like and subscribe for more JRPG content. It really helps out the channel. And until next time, I'm out.